Alex Stock, Pier Marketing. Thank you for joining us today on Real Insight. For the folks that are watching at home, Alex runs the business that does all the marketing for Insight Systems, our amazing marketing. Alex, tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about Pier.
Yeah, thank you. So, we've been working with Insight now for a number of years, and it's been fantastic to, I suppose, get much more involved with the business especially over the last 2-3 years. And what's been really nice is to have the support and actual engagement, genuine engagement for Dan and Wayne, and that's just made such a difference. And we first met them back in 2017, it would be, and actually with an event that Daryl from Security was running.
Daryl's also done one of these podcasts.
Yes, he has. And so Daryl actually made the introduction, and it's kind of just gone from there. Did a little bit of work with Dan actually whilst Wayne was on long service leave, and it sort of blossomed, ended up doing some strategic marketing planning work, and then now everything from like we're doing today, bit of video, bit of photography.
For the folks that can't see, beyond the podcast studio, the office is full today of videographers, photographers, script writers, the works. So we're doing a whole bunch of content for the next 12 or so months. And, you guys are instrumental in a lot of that. One thing that's obvious to me is this accent. This accent is not local. I'm guessing we are British.
Yeah.
And where from?
So originally West London, but moved all around the UK. So West London, East London, and then out into the sticks, and then ended up at university in South Wales, at Swansea, which is where I met my wife. And then we moved out to Australia in 2012 with the business I was with at the time.
Yep.
And I was meant to be for 2 years. So
classic
now,
story.
Well, nearly 12 years.
Yeah.
A business, children, house, dog, all those things that just happen in life. So that was an amazing opportunity that I was given by the business Carndine, who really supported both myself and ultimately Catherine to come out to Australia. And Catherine was actually working for the business she started with in the UK, which is Assa Abloy. So Lockwood's the sort of the big brand in Australia, but then Yale in the UK. And sort of her career really sort of developed and blossomed there. She came over to Australia, took up a consulting and project management role, marketing project management role, but always really wanted to start her own business. And it was Catherine that really took that leap whilst I was earning a corporate stable salary to start Pier Marketing. So without Catherine's just dedication and hard work to getting up every single morning and doing the grind of getting Pier Marketing off the ground nearly 10 years ago. So it'll be our 10th anniversary next year.
Yeah, wow.
So the name Pier Marketing would have been July, and then we were incorporated in November. Next year's our 10 years, which is just phenomenal, really, to think.
Well, this is our 20.
Yes.
I've only been here for 3 and a bit, but 20 years in any business, in any country, in any field is phenomenal. 10 years is probably just as important. 2 or 3 years is like the benchmark for pass or fail. So you've outshone that. Has it always been marketing for you?
I fell into marketing. Both, Catherine and I fell into marketing. I think post-university, neither of us did a marketing degree. I did economics and politics, and Catherine did history and politics. And then, looking for jobs after university, Catherine ended up getting an EA role and then moved into corporate communications and ultimately marketing. And then for myself, we had a family friend who was in marketing and PR, in agriculture mainly. Ended up having a chat to her. She said, you should give it a go, think you might like it. Ended up starting an advertising agency, then moving to a big quarrying business in the UK. then into commercial flooring, but all of those were either through marketing, corporate communications, then ultimately sales management, back into marketing management, customer service. So always in the commercial side of business, as opposed to whether it be the IT, finance, HR side, always the selling side of business, basically.
Yeah. I want to break some stuff down, particularly in the realm of marketing. Now, I'm a tech guy, and so I'm all right at selling, but that's only because I know the gear well enough. So I'm not a seasoned salesperson, but the relationship between selling and marketing is one that is imperative, particularly in the modern economy. When we look at marketing, the marketing landscape's changed quite a lot too, and so I'm always aware of the concept of, on one hand we have marketing, and on the other hand we have branding, and I want to try and understand how you see the difference in the two. How do they relate? And what do you do in both fields that are completely separate?
Yeah. So what you said about sales and marketing is completely true. It's absolutely interlinked, and fundamentally they're actually one and the same thing. So if you take a little bit of a step back, marketing is very simply how you take your product or service to market, or a combination of two for Insight, where you're obviously putting products into installations, but you're also offering a significant service that wraps around that product as well. So I think it's really important to not conflate tactical execution with the concept of marketing a product. So when you get to brand is a part of how you market your product, and your logo, your colours, the fonts you use, all those kind of things are an important part of brand, but it goes much deeper than that. And it's almost making sure that you do what you say you're going to do, and it doesn't matter what it is. You just actually follow through on that promise, because that's what determines.
So a cultural thing.
Yeah, a cultural thing. And I don't want to make this sound too wanky. I think we've got a good example at the moment in the aviation industry in Australia, where a brand has not delivered on what it promises to do. And that's the brand. It's not about what's on the tail fin of an aircraft, or that's just a logo.
Correct.
The actual brand is the way that people experience, and it's important for everybody and for every business. And I think Insight do a wonderful job at that, actually walking the talk and really making sure that when they say that people are important, it's not just a throwaway line. It's actually understanding what that means, and looking around the office. Yes, it's on screens. That's one thing, but you can actually see in the way that the individuals behave throughout the organisation as well. And that is what brand is. So yes, it's cultural, and the execution of that brand through everything you do. I mean, you just look at this place and it is beautifully organised. It's very clean. It's very tidy. That's part of your brand proposition. And I think you go to a builder and you look at their truck, you look at their ute, and it's all beautifully organised. Then you probably know that person's going to be a pretty organised and well-structured individual. And it goes the same for businesses. If people turn up in ripped shirts, they haven't cleaned their shoes, all those kind of things, that speaks. And it's almost like the medium is the message. And so just being really cognizant about the way that we present ourselves as individuals within an organisation, and the way that the organisation presents itself as well. So that is building brand.
Brand.
What it stands for.
Where I first was exposed to the power of a brand, I worked for JB in their business and commercial for about 5 years, and a great organisation to work for. Easily one of the most recognisable brands in the country. But there was a director of marketing at the time, Scott Brown was his name, and this guy was like marketing incarnate. As the sort of guy who just thinks consistently about the brand and thinks consistently about, what the interpretation of that brand is like. And it solidified for me the relationship between, like we were saying, brand and the importance of where brand lies. And a lot of that is actually the internals of the business, where the marketing part becomes a bit more of the external. The point that you made before about brand being about the people, there's also something else that's really exciting that's going on with the modern messaging economy, particularly social media, and that's the emergence of the personal brand. So personal brands have been around forever, but really only if you're a big, a big celebrity or a big sports player or something like that. But now anyone can create a personal brand. What I'm really keen to know is how should businesses be leveraging the personal brands of their employees, but then what are the risks and the pitfalls in leveraging those social networks as well?
I think it's really interesting. You look at social media. I mean, we'd always say like social media can be part of the story, but it's not the answer to everything. And it's actually thinking about the different platforms where individuals and businesses perform better or worse, or there's not too much distinction between the two. So if you look at the meta platforms, especially so Instagram and Facebook, we don't see a big difference between how a person and a business performs in terms of engagement. If the content's good, it gets good engagement, and it can help build that brand. So we think about those platforms, certainly from an organic perspective, where you're not paying to push the content to anybody. That's a brand awareness play, really, in that you're trying to put out good quality content that people are interested in. Interestingly, on LinkedIn, businesses don't seem to perform anywhere near as well as individuals in terms of engagement and the way that other people want to engage on that platform is much more with the individuals. So that comes to your point about how to use individuals within the business to amplify an organization's message.
Yep.
So, and I think that's a lot of it. People, it's not meant to be this cliched, rubbish again, but people buy from people. So you don't have to be best mates with everybody, but you've got to have a trust and a likability. And I think that's something that in the business world, there are obviously people that you get on well with professionally, and you've got good alignment in your business ethics, the way that you do business, and if a organization's recruiting people to its ethics, its culture, and its values, then you're hopefully going to attract like-minded customers, like-minded suppliers. So therefore, you get a good, I suppose, digital social community. And we've got to be careful we don't end up in the echo chamber as well, because the algorithms push like stuff to us. So always being cognizant of that as we see the stuff that we like.
Yeah. So you think you're right all the time. Yeah. You think you're doing the right thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's definitely a danger. But I think that, the individual can be a really important part of that. And even just down to a very tactical and executional level is when we put content out, whether it be for ourselves or for our clients on their organizational platforms, we will always encourage and direct the people within that business to comment, share, and because they just get so much better engagement because it's people with people as opposed to organizations to people, which is a bit like, well, yeah, so.
Yeah, particularly on LinkedIn. And I noticed the same, I spent a bit of time on there and, even looking at the uptake of the Insight Systems page, there's quite often a lot of engagement. It's quite often, but you don't see like massive uptick in followers or things like that, because I think to your point, it's people to people. There are some businesses that still don't have a social media strategy. Like, is that acceptable now? Is there a business in the world where you would go, well, social media is not really for you, or is it a case of getting amongst it?
I think getting amongst it is it, and it's about spending the right amount of effort. I mean, we're not a social media agency by any stretch of the imagination. We run socials for our clients. There are businesses that have built fantastic businesses and revenue streams from social media, and often in the consumer goods space as well, in the fast-moving consumer goods, fashion, and sort of cosmetics, that sort of arena where there's more on the B2B side of things, it's a brand awareness thing. So I think there's always a place for it. I think you've got to temper expectations on what is actually going to result from effort into social media. And it's just thinking about, I suppose, where if you've got $1,000 to spend, where's the best place to spend that $1,000? It's probably not in social media.
Yeah.
But if you've got $2,000 to spend, maybe some of that's best spent in social media. So I think it's getting your foundations right. So making sure your brand's right, making sure your website's right, making sure the way you do things is right as well. So you talk about the product a lot in marketing, and making sure that product is acceptable. So you've got good product market fit, in that the market's actually buying what you're selling, is really, really important. If you don't get all those things right first, then social media is going to do nothing. It's social media is like I subscribe to the daily Seth Godin blog, and one of the things he was saying is social media can be a bit like billboards in Hollywood, where sure, you can buy a billboard, but who's looking at it?
Correct.
So it's a nice ego. It can be a bit of a vanity metric.
Yep.
It can help you build your brand, but I just always caution on any single tactic being a panacea for success.
And it depends on how you want to measure that success too, right? Yeah. Like from a marketing perspective, is the success, I see an increase in sales, or do I see an increase in followers, or do I see an increase in engagement? Whatever that might be. So is defining, what the outcomes for the marketing campaign are, is that really important? Because I think most people would think marketing needs to lead to sales every day of the week. And if it doesn't lead to sales, does that mean the marketing was wrong? Like the campaign was wrong?
I think probably taking it back a step and upper level is that business activity has to lead to sales. Otherwise, you're not sustainable. Within that business activity, you've got lots of things that you need to do. You need to look after your people. You may need to look after your finances. You need to look after your operations. And you need to look after the way that you take your product to market, which is marketing. So that will be supporting the sales team. If you've got a sales team, it can be generating leads as well, if it's that kind of business that needs that. And that active lead generation, it can be brand position, brand building. So making sure that more people know about your brand before they're even in the market to purchase. Because if you've essentially primed them when they're moving through the marketing funnel from brand awareness to consideration to purchase, then you're more likely to get a successful purchase because they know about you earlier on, rather than being in the bun fight for a sale at the bottom of the marketing funnel, at point of conversion, basically.
Yep. One of the things that happened to me the other day that was really interesting is, I've sort of always considered myself to be very aware of marketing, and then hence like not as susceptible to it. Like just from a young age, I get the concept of advertising. And so I spent so many years like listening to ads and going, who would like listen to that ad and then go, yeah, I'm going to call this guy and I'm going to grab that service. Like let's use the example of it being on the radio. Until the other day, like I have an investment property and I needed to get a depreciation schedule put together for it. And it's just in the back of my mind, I need to organise a depreciation schedule. And then an ad comes on the radio for blah, 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 depreciation specialists, and I'm thinking this is that example where I would always be listening to an ad like this and thinking, who would want to get a depreciation schedule from a vendor that they saw on Triple M, drive time in the morning? Well, me. So there was a penny drop moment for me where I think, and the point that you made about being primed, my mind was primed knowing that I need this service. So naturally, one of the first times I hear about a service provider offering that, I'm going to go, I'll go in that direction.
What's interesting there is that I'm hoping you've followed some additional due diligence steps. Is you then go onto Google and type in whoever it was, and then you see their ratings.
Yeah.
And you have a quick look through the latest ratings. Maybe they got 4.7, 4.8, whatever, 150 reviews. Looks good. Then you jump on their website, make sure their website looks vaguely sensible, and then you jump on the contact us page.
Yeah.
And then when you've contacted them, as long as that experience of you get an email back that says thanks for getting in touch, will be somebody will call you or email you within 24 hours. So you're actually going through that process.
Yeah.
And yes, the radio ad made you aware of them and maybe put you into consideration, but then your consideration was further solidified when you went through, looked at their Google ratings, went onto their website. If you filled in the contact us page and actually you then jumped on somebody else that came up on the Google search at the same time, and just did that as they look good as well. If that original business who had the ad up never got back to you, well, what was the point of doing the ad?
Yeah.
And the point of that is that it's not just the advertising and the brand awareness that's important. It's about following that all the way through the chain, so that all those interactions, and this is brand, you're fulfilling a brand promise, that to signing up to the service, to getting the service delivered, to the finalization of that service is congruent with the expectation that that you had when you listened to the radio ad. So advertising is a part of marketing, and I think this hopefully illustrates the fact that marketing's far broader than that one radio ad. It's everything else that happened after that, and everything else that happened before that as well is really important.
Well, that's a good point too, because particularly, and I say this respectfully for all the sales guys out there, right? Sales guys are on the earth to sell. They want to sell, they want to make money. And particularly businesses that look for marketing strategies to bring about selling or to bring about sales. And they think, okay, I spend $10,000 on the campaign, the leads will come, the sales guys will convert them. That's how the cycle works. What you explained there was the beauty of why that normally fails, is because it's about so much more, right? Like that's getting the phone to ring. And then it's up to you from the minute the phone rings, right, to see the rest of that through.
Well, that as well, and also the expectation of, you just go into benchmark sort of statistics on, if you're going to go and spend whatever, 10 grand and a cost per click is whatever, $2 a click or $5 a click, whether it be on the Google platforms or the Meta platforms. LinkedIn's normally much higher. You'd argue that it is a better, more defined audience, but I'm not sure. Is once you've actually done the maths on it, the reality of getting a return on a $10,000 campaign on its own as a single piece of activity can be very questionable. So that's when you think about, right, brand, have I primed that? And this goes back to your question about, should every piece of marketing activity end up in a sale? No, because you've got to prime the market, then you've got to tell the market that you're offering them something, and then you've got to get them interested, and then you've got to get them in contact. And if conversion rates are in the single digits, which they are, they're 2%, 1.5%. I think during 2020, 2021, e-commerce rates were 6, 7, 8% conversion rate, because you couldn't buy by going down to the shop. They now come right back down to 2% conversion rate. So for every 100 people you get on your website, this is for e-com, you're going to get 2 people that buy. If you look into like the Shopify data, the average sale on Shopify is at $45 or something like that. Maybe it's $50, around that, call it $50. Of course, that's revenue, not margin. So actually the return on investment, by the time you spent 10 grand, what do you actually need to get in terms of sales to then make that work again? And then you need to retain. So I think it's something like 4 or 5 individual sales on e-com that you need to then to actually get a break even on that return on investment generally, just using benchmark statistics. And it can be much better than that, it can be much worse than that. But that goes into B2B effort as well. And if you think about your marketing effort and taking your product and service to market as an investment in salespeople, in collateral, in advertising, in platforms, there's a huge investment that goes in. I think it's more helpful to look at that entire investment rather than a single 10 grand campaign, because a 10 grand campaign might not have delivered many leads or many sales, but it might have done a really good job in pushing the business out there in a really appropriate way, and actually building the brand. So you ended up with a brand success, brand building success, rather than a lead generation success. So it can be a bit, you have to learn.
Well, it seems like the key then is to develop like an all-encompassing strategy, right? It's not about like one campaign a year pushing something. It's about what are we doing across all facets of a strategy. What does a sensible marketing strategy look like to the average business?
Yeah, but I think that's just business as a whole. So if you get your business, if you know what your business is trying to do, then you know what people you need to deliver that. If you know what people you need, you know what financial structure you need, you know what operational structure you need, and marketing's no different for that. And I think sometimes it gets, my business needs to do better. Let's do some more marketing.
Yeah.
Where actually, if it's not done in conjunction with getting the people piece right, getting the operational piece right, getting the financial piece right. Because if you've got 10 grand in the bank, don't go and spend 10 grand on a marketing campaign. That's madness. You've got to be sensible and do the modeling. If you're $1 million business, if you're a $100,000 business, if you're a 10 million or 100 million, the numbers are different, but the concept should be the same of how you structure that piece of work to get your message out there. And lots of the stuff you can do is actually pretty relatively low cost, can be really effective. Email can be really effective if done well.
Yep.
And that can be overlooked sometimes. Just getting a really good, meaningful and well-structured website is really important so that people can find you. But then the reality is that something like 80% of traffic to a website will be confined to maybe 4, 5, 6 pages.
Yeah.
It's very, very concentrated. And that's pretty common because, people spend a minute and a half on a website. So you can't digest that much information. And I think if you start with an idea of what the behaviours of people are, if we know that, and then we don't go down rabbit warrens, worrying about the wrong thing, and start with the simple stuff and a plan. You think, a strategic plan, that should last you 3, 4, 5 years, really.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be, swapping strategy all the time. So once you know what you're trying to do, then you, build a program of marketing in the same way that you build a program of cash flow management, in the same way that you build a program of warehouse management and people management to make sure that you're doing what's right for the business.
Yep. What do you think is an acceptable time frame if someone was to jump into a decent marketing strategy or a branding strategy? How long do you really need to let that thing gestate before you can sensibly say there's some results?
Well, I think a high growth business is determined by 20% growth year on year. So what I'll get to is quite a long time. It's not days, it's not years, it's probably something in between. And there's sort of like this idea of a plateau of latent opportunity where nothing's happening. And all of a sudden, everything sort of falls into place and can take off. So months would be, in reality, to devise and develop a well thought through marketing strategy is a couple of months' work. And that's not meaning it's a couple of months of, 9 to 5 days a week work, but it's a time you need to stop and think and review and challenge and debate. Even if you've employed a full-time, marketing manager, marketing director, whatever it might be in your business, it's going to take an amount of time for that person to really understand what's going on and really develop a meaningful piece of work that allows that business to develop a program of marketing that's appropriate to what they're trying to achieve, to the markets they're trying to go to, their budgets, all those kind of things. So, we do it ourselves. We let things run for a minimum of 3 months as an absolute minimum.
Yep.
Because if you're not doing that, you're not letting it.
Grounds for measure. Yeah. Let's take it away from the marketing stuff for a minute. Now, Pier's a family business built by a family. Where did the name Pier come from to start with?
So this was before I had anything particularly to do with Pier on a day-to-day basis. And I said, it was Catherine's brainchild. She wanted to develop a marketing agency which could offer really high quality corporate level marketing to smaller businesses. And at the time it was probably micro to small businesses. Now we're much more medium enterprise focused, but still with the same idea that you might be a $50, $100, $150 million business, but if marketing isn't a core function of your business, actually you probably don't have the work for a broad marketing team.
Yep.
And there's actually no need for them. So that's, I suppose, where we come in. It's that same idea, is that you're getting corporate level marketing quality and expertise that can dial into the business. And we do still work with a number of micro businesses. and small businesses and get some great success with them. And so I remember it quite clearly. We're sitting on the beach and just chatting about what we should, or what Catherine should call the business. And we came up with the idea of peer and the three meanings of the word peer. So one is your equal, it's in P-E-E-R. And then to peer, again, the same spelling, but to look and to look over. And then peer, which is the spelling that we landed on, which is the support structure out into the sea. And we're based down on the Mornington Peninsula as well. So that sort of tie into the beach and sea all happened. And I remember just sitting there and think, we should call it Pier Marketing. Yeah, we should. And it actually had a bit of a story behind it and a bit of integrity of why we wanted to call it that. And that was sort of it. That was...
There you go. Well, for a fourth definition, if you're one of the guys in my team, Brendan, he's a Kiwi, and pear is the fruit that you eat.
That's a P. Is that a P-I-A?
P-E-A-R.
A
pear.
A pear.
Yeah, but it's pear. If you're a Kiwi, it's pronounced pear. Yeah, so that'd be the fourth way that you could use that if you needed to, the fruit as well. What's it like? So it was 11 years ago that you came to Australia.
Yeah, 12 nearly, 11 and a half, yeah.
So new place to live, Catherine starting a business in the early stages of getting to Australia?
Yeah, pretty early. So she did, I reckon, about 18 months, 2 years with Assa Abloy, full-time, then to part-time, then sort of that on a contract basis started to drop off, and then she started to build her consultancy on the side of that.
So tell me the point where the business starts and the first child comes along, because that's what I'm really interested in how that dynamic then affects the growth of a business.
Yeah, so that was definitely a bit of a watershed moment for the business. So our first child, 2017, so Pier would have been going for 3 and a bit years, about 3.5 years. Then first child came along. And
is that when you have more involvement in the business?
Yeah, so I finished up with in my corporate role around that time as well, and I was doing a bit of consultancy on customer experience, and then kind of dipping in, helping. I say helping. I don't know if it was always helping, trying to help in Pier for that sort of year. And then we had a bit of staff changes in 2018. So that's when I took over as general manager. And yeah, Catherine really didn't, I think that was she was very much at the helm at the time and didn't get much of a mat leave with our first child. So that was definitely a pressure point. And it's a very young business thing. You look back in 3.5-year-old business, that was young.
But that's my point. Like most businesses will consume you entirely for the first 5 or 6 years. So in a situation where you've got a young fledgling business that's getting a bit of traction, and then, children are coming along, and the whole dynamic's changing. Does that become like, was there ever a time during that where you're thinking like, all right, it's going to stay this way, or do we have to think differently? Like, was the future of Pier always guaranteed in entering into the family environment, or is it?
No, definitely not. No? I think it was never intended to be a family business. It was always meant to be Catherine's business. And it was only through, circumstance that I really got involved 5, nearly 6 years ago now, but then sort of running it on a day-to-day basis for 5 years. And I think looking back, like I say, it really was 3.5 years ago, serious fledgling business that was getting a bit of traction. So really trying to get to a point of critical mass has been a focus for the last 5 years. And, even sitting down, you look back over the last 10 years, and you have some times which have been fantastic, others that have been more challenging, and working out that dynamic of working together, which we don't really do much anymore, which I think has been a good thing, and really try to make that distinction between work life and home life, and having that separation, especially when things are tough at work, because you don't want to then bring that that pressure out of whatever the 9 to 5 into the,
But that's got to take discipline, right? Like, because we're at home together. Work is probably sometimes at home and sometimes in the office, and like that's got to take some dedicated focus to be like, now it's family time.
Yeah, and I think I don't think either of us have been like, we're not particularly the kind of people that go to the park and sit on our phones doing work emails at the weekend. We've never been that kind of never taken that approach. But it can just be as simple as, I want to talk about work. Well, I don't want to talk about work, and actually respecting that when you're at home, work's secondary.
Yep.
And if someone says, I don't want to talk about work, as much as that can make you think, well, I want to talk about it, it's not the time or the place. And just really respecting that. So I think we've got better as we've been stricter about separating when we do and don't talk about work. That's been, that's been helpful. Very helpful.
Is Catherine technically still your boss?
Yes.
Yeah, good. That's good. I love hearing stuff like that. It's very cool. Very cool. When it comes to, the services that you offer, something that always interests me is, the service provider and its ability to align with the customer, particularly when you're talking about marketing. I imagine that's something that's really important. Even as a provider of AV services, sometimes there's a client where you've reached the end, right? Like there's not really much more that you can offer, but the client still doesn't feel satisfaction or return. Is that something that is part of your ethos? It's about making sure the relationship between the two entities work.
Yeah, and that starts at very initial stages, and we've got much better at that, I think, over the last 2 to 3 years, about really focusing on good organisational fit. Mm-hmm. And I think it's always a danger when you're running your own business, you've got payroll to make. Fundamentally, cash needs to come in the door, and that's it. And I think sometimes in the past, we've probably made decisions, well, I say probably, in the past, we have made decisions that we would not make again. And I think it's really important for us to remain true to who we're trying to work with. Mm. And that comes, I think the way that people think about business and how they do business and how they conduct themselves is the most important part of getting good alignment with our customers. And when we work with somebody who has the same kind of business ethics as us, has the same, I suppose, just view on the way that things should be done, it makes it much easier when we have really long-term relationships. We've got clients we work with for 8-9 years now, and maybe even pushing 10 next year. So I think we've got some founding clients, a couple that are still with us, and just trying to and ahh about the dates there. But some really long-standing clients, Insight Systems have been with us now since 2017, so six years. I mean, not always. Firstly, it was with myself doing a bit of consulting, but and I look at that and think that's that's an incredible achievement to have that ongoing trust. Yeah, and
there's employees in this business that haven't been here that long. A significant amount of them.
Yeah,
so that the relationship extends longer than some of the people that work here.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge amount of value that I place on that. And ideally, I would love, and it just the world just doesn't work this way. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work this way. But I would love us to never lose a client. And there's 101 reasons why you lose a client. There might be a breakdown in relationship for a reason, for whatever reason. There might be you just comes to the end of the line, change of personality. The business is growing. They decide to take on their own internals, which we actively support our clients to do that if they want to. I think we just always take a step back and we think, what do we want to do? We always want to act in the best interests of our clients.
Yeah,
and be very, I suppose, open and transparent about that, so that if a client ever thinks we're not acting in their best interest, that we want to be called out on that, to have the discussion and make sure that we are, because we then hold ourselves accountable and we're making sure that we are doing the right thing. Because activity is easy. And there's I say I read a lot. I don't. I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
So do I.
I just can't. Anyway, so that's where I am now, which I really enjoy. And one of the little stories in the book I've just been reading was about the problem with a personal chef is the chef can only cook what the chef can cook. So the danger is that with any business, you will only ever get given what that business can do. And that's a real danger, I think, of very specialised businesses. I mean, everything has its pros and cons. Specialised businesses can do one thing very, very well. But if you go to, if you go to a tax accountant and ask them if they need tax accounting, they're going to say yes. So I think it's really important for us that we don't just try and sell and push things that are there because we can. It's because it makes a positive difference to that business. And then that comes back to being embedded in the business, understanding what they're about, what they want to achieve, and really, having that integrity over what we're suggesting, because it's what we do for our own business.
Yeah. What are the metrics for success? Because, again, in my industry, client comes to us and says, I want AV system that does A, B, C, needs to look like this, feel like this, and we want to use it this way. You take that information, you build the system, you put the system in, you go back with the functionality brief, tick, tick, tick. Yep, does what you want it to do. You love it. It's easy to use. Great, success. In marketing, it's different. Like, what is it? Come to the end of a campaign. What are the metrics we put on the table and go, did this work or didn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a really fair question. And some it's very easy, and sometimes it's really, much more tricky. And what you've alluded to there is very much a project. So if we do a web development project, that's kind of exactly what happens is spec it out, put a timeline together, deliver it, hopefully on time and budget. That's the idea. And if that's done, that's a success because the client's been alongside us every step of the way. I think with definitely where we struggle and where we like to get more information from our clients is understanding what's happening with leads coming into the business, conversion of leads, and then the sale that comes out of that, so the value of that lead. So we'll ask a lot of those questions because if we don't know what they are, we can't say what the right activity is. Yeah. So lead generation can be one thing, but actually lead conversion can be a much more important thing. So rather than, if you've got 100 leads, rather than trying to get 200 leads, because if you're converting 30%, say, well, don't worry about getting 200 then to convert another 30%. Instead, work on your conversion rate, which is actually probably a cheaper and easier thing to do to get that up to 40, 50, 60% conversion, which might be pie in the sky. But my point is that often the thing that you're trying to do is not the thing that will give the best business results. Yeah. So ultimately, success is the business growing. Yep. That's ultimately what it is. Because we're a commercial, fundamentally we're a commercial service. So why would you do a new website, for instance? Well, it's because you've got to reposition and re-communicate what you're doing in a different way to what you're doing at the moment. There's no point just doing a new website for a new website.
Yeah, just for a refresh.
What's the point?
Yeah.
It's because you've actually got to change and what you've got is not delivering what you need it to do. And whether that be generate leads, whether it be serve information to clients. It's really, I think it's just really important to understand what are we trying to achieve, how are we going to grow the business that we're working with, and that's on the onus of that business owner and that leader of that business. We can't grow someone's business for them, but we can support them in that journey, in that functional journey of growing their business. So, when we put together post-campaign analysis, and obviously we'll be looking at campaigns as they're going as well to make sure they're performing at least to benchmark, if not above, and then understanding how many leads have come in. Were they good quality leads? Have you converted them? Did they result in good work? Equally through brand building, who's interacting with content, who's sharing content, who's liking content, who's commenting on content, and not down to an individual. I don't mean that. I mean from a demographic way. Emails are great for that. What's the open rate? What's the unsubscribe rate? So you just get a feel of whether people are actually interested in what you're putting out there. But again, that's only ever part of the story. I mean, you guys have got a sales team. They need to be supported as well. And I'd always say that I would rather, in a business like this, I'd rather an extra salesperson than more promotional budget.
Yes.
Because that's probably going to get you the better return.
Correct.
And it's, spend the money where it's returning.
Email has almost done a full circle, right? So email was late 90s, early 2000s, like the digital way to communicate. So get a big mail list, mail it out once a week, hope for the best. And then it became just spam central, right? Everyone filtered everything out. People didn't bother anymore. No one opens that stuff. But it feels to me like email has become a bit more relevant again. Is that something you're seeing? And do you still see email as being a really important tool for regular communication?
Yeah, massive. And I think because it's relatively inexpensive to do, and you can do some pretty simple automations now around engagement. So simply put, you send the email out. Anybody that opens that email or visits your website or interacts with your socials go into an engaged list. Mm-hmm. And so those people get sent more content. I don't mean spammed content, but the next time you send out an email, you only send that email to the engaged list of people. Yeah. So therefore, you can up your open rates to 50, 60, 70%. I mean, there's
so it's a more targeted audience, but a greater click-through rate.
Targeted.
Yeah.
And then with the people that are disengaged, not the unsubscribes go, they disappear. But the people who are disengaged, then you can send them information maybe on a quarterly basis or a half-yearly basis. If they then re-engage, then they go onto the engaged list, and then they get the choice of dropping off that list again by their activity. Mm. And I think, as I said, it's a very, very cost-effective way of just keeping in touch with customers, and a lot of it's brand awareness as well. It's just, this is what we're doing. This is an interesting article. This is the way that the market's going. This is a project. And I think that we've just done, not making it all about you is really, really important. So can you give some decent quality content out to your email database? And sure, it's okay as well, I think, to say we've done a really cool project. Look at this.
Yeah, and case studies, it's funny, like case studies are one of those ones where, particularly in the industry, and we watch what happens on LinkedIn from time to time, that 9 times out of 10, the highest opener of your case study is your competitor, because they want to see what you're doing and what you're up to and what the clients are thinking of that. So we see a lot of that. But it becomes a thing for me where, again, doing any one of these things has a much limited result. So an effective campaign is do Facebook, do Instagram, do the email, and echo that message out across as many different platforms as possible. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and keep echoing those things.
Content's expensive. The bottom line is content is expensive. So if you can get one piece of anchor content, if you like, so whether that be a blog, whether it be a podcast, whether it be a video, whatever that is, and then essentially slice that up into lots of different pieces of content that then you can post as short clips onto socials, that you can put on YouTube as a long form. And bear in mind that YouTube's the most searched and indexed search engine, that more than the Google search platform. YouTube is more content and indexing is done on YouTube than on Google search.
Yep.
So having your captions on, it scrapes all that and it starts to build a really good bank of content that you can put out onto there. Then put that into an EDM, and bear in mind that people don't see this stuff. And I think sometimes we get a bit worried that we're boring people. And I will often say that if we're getting bored of our content, that might mean that somebody has taken notice of it in the market.
Yeah, okay.
You need that repetition of brand and repetition of message in the hope that someone's going to twig what you're doing and what you're saying and what you stand for.
Yep. One of the things that a lot of people can get excited, one of the people, the thing that happens to me, I have an ADHD brain. So for me, it's about that. Oh, now I want to do that. Now I want to do that. Now I want to try that. Now we should be trying that. Possibly the worst way to market a business, right? Is come up with your plan, stick to your plan, execute your plan over 12 months.
Yeah.
But people's attention spans are waning more than they've ever done before. And now content exists in 30-second, 40-second blocks. And even that's too long. I've got to swipe away after 10 seconds. is there any silver bullet, holy grail stuff that people can do in short form to make sure that they're getting their message across as effective as possible?
I'd always guard against any kind of silver bullets.
Yep.
I think, like you just alluded to, is consistency of message, consistency of activity is really important. And even, you talk about, the longevity of business. And if I think about the numerous business owners I would have spoken to over the last 10 years, it's the ones that are getting to the 20 years where success is really starting to happen, and actually getting some real traction. And even over that first 10 years, that you're learning a lot about what you should and shouldn't be doing. And that's a big learning curve. And then and part of that's the way that you promote and communicate yourself. So I think that consistency of message, sure, doing little sort of grabs can be helpful. But again, it's about most of this, especially if you're in the business to business world, it is people sell to people. So how do you just have, or like we spoke about with the depreciation accountants.
Yep.
How do we just prime people so that when they see you in another setting, they're like, I recognize, so you've actually got that familiarity, and that can probably be quite quick.
Yeah.
Those little grabs. And I think I'd say there's no silver bullet, but I would be doing, sort of one piece of anchor content regularly, and then pushing that out on as many channels as possible. And networking is really good, really effective. Meeting people, being challenged about what you do, talking about what you do, not to sell, but to get some feedback as to whether what you're doing is of interest to people, and then iterating as well. And the number of people you meet that have developed this, their baby is beautiful, but no one's buying. And actually being honest enough with yourself to say, if the product's right, you don't need that much marketing.
Yeah.
And if the product's right, it'll take care of itself, because you get a couple of people that really love it, and then they tell other people about it, and then those people tell other people. And that's a very simplistic way of looking at it. But I think there's a lot of truth in that, is that you get really nail your product, make it simple. And as we've made all these mistakes, making things too complicated, making things too broad. And if we look at ourselves honestly, we deliver probably 4 things regularly. That's it.
Yeah,
that's what we deliver. Strategic advice, monthly management, branding, and websites. There's 4 things we do.
Yeah.
But if you look at the services we offer, I could probably name 20 or 30. And it's you get into all these 80-20s, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's a reality that if you can actually communicate really clearly what you do consistently, then people know what that business stands for. And that's a really good place to start.
And to draw, a conclusion from the stuff that you just explained then, no amount of marketing, no matter how good or expensive, is going to sell a crappy product, right? Like, the product has to be proven, tested. It's got to have an audience.
It's got to be good.
Yeah.
And I think, but equally on the other side of that, you've got to be careful that what they say is that, you can have an average product that's well distributed, that does really, really well, and you can have an excellent product with no distribution, which does very, very poorly. So there's that. So once you get into products, product marketing, that distribution, it's route to market, simple route to market stuff. And if you think about professional service businesses like ourselves, our route to market isn't a supermarket. It is networking events. It is, those are the things that we need to go to get ourselves out there and make introductions. And so it's really understanding what is the route to market for your business. And if that's selling into, one of the big 2 supermarkets, 3, 4 maybe, then that's where you've got to go. If it's going to networking events to meet other business owners and people within the business sphere, that's what you've got to do. And I think sometimes we forget that actually business is just a lot of shoe leather sometimes. It's just hard work.
Yep. And I think that's the thing that people are becoming more and more scared of in the modern economy, is hard work. It's one of those things that I find that people just can't wrap their heads around anymore. Just get in and do it.
Yeah.
That sort of brings us to the end. Alex. That's been good. I know so much more about marketing than I did before I started this podcast, so that's good. For folks that want to get in touch, we're going to have links and things down in the comments. But what's the easiest, most effective way to reach out to yourselves and Pier?
I reckon website, probably peermarketing.com.au, and just, contact us.
They do good work, peeps. We can vouch for that firsthand. So yeah, if you're a small, medium business going through any phase of growth and you need assistance with your marketing strategy, Pier your people, give them a call.
Much.
Thanks, Alex. It's been a pleasure. We'll do it again.
Perfect.
Ta.
Good on you.